you are in a space where you're doing your music, your movies, you're dancing, and you want to make sure that you stay relatable. Do you feel like all of this took her away from being relatable?
No, I mean, if anything, I think it shows almost a hustle.
All right, we're back with another episode. Hashtag randomly with Ronnie Jr. That would be me. We've got Crisco hanging out, doing his
Yes.
radio thing. We have been radio friends for probably close to 8 years now.
Yeah.
Listen, man, how you doing, first of all? And can we talk about Jennifer Lopez today? We got to
Well,
talk about her.
Hey, Ronnie, before we even jump into that, salute to you on that montage at the beginning of the show. I mean, when you look back at your career, bro, I mean, we're talking a well-accomplished veteran here. You know what I mean? Like, if nobody gives you your flowers right now, definitely one of the greats in this industry we call radio and just life and just presenting content. I mean, come on, man. That's some stuff that a lot of these people that just live strictly online, they can't do what you've done already, man. So
well, I do appreciate it. And you as well. I mean, you know, like I said, 8-year radio career. And what we're going to talk about today is Jennifer Lopez, but not in the way that is sort of becoming these easy conversational points, which I do understand. And I think what's interesting about me and Crisco, because we both worked in radio, you know, these forward-facing jobs in terms of brands, and we've worked behind the scenes as well. Right. We want to look at somebody as iconic as J-Lo and understand she's got them talking and kind of double down on some things, but then kind of showcasing she's just trying to feed her family. She's an icon. She's a queen. And really celebrate that too. So let me tell you all, one of the things that makes Crisco really informative to this conversation is, if I show you here in the clip, Crisco actually had an extensive interview. You could talk about where this was featured and the fact that the interview was probably going to last a certain period of time. But for whatever reason, and I don't know how many years ago this was, you and J-Lo caught a little connection. And again, like I said, we will be critical as well. But tell me about this vibe, man. Lots of people get to talk to her, but you and her had something. What was it that you and her had at this time?
Yeah, you know, actually, this was like our first interview, right? And really the first time having an extensive dialogue, and we'll call it that because I think just from different times in our career, I have left radio stations that where she would come and I would be bouncing out, right? And it was just like, oh my God, I miss J-Lo, right? Or anytime shows were happening, I would always somehow be out of market. And I think we initially just, that conversation started with a real, like, because, you know, everything moved kind of Zoom or StreamYard. And I was like, is that a real background or is that your real pull? And then so it just started off as a real conversation. And I think that's the type of conversation she does like to have, is the real ones with just like real people. And because that's what she is at the end of the day. I think she's a person that's not afraid to show her strengths, her weaknesses, some of the flaws, but most importantly, she's human. She's a mom. She's, like you said, she's a pop icon. I mean, it's rare that you could probably go somewhere and them not know who J-Lo or Jennifer Lopez is. And for a lot of people, many people across the world, she's Selena. So
I was going to say, at the very least,
the conversation was still one of my favorites to this day that I've had with an artist, celebrity, period.
I was going to say, at the very least, Selena, like, she was able to do something with that role that was very important at that time. So as I said, I don't want to give too much, like, let's not take too much extra time, you know, focusing on the negative, but there is a little bit of chatter. And what the chatter is people are just not really connecting to her right now. So basically you get a lot of things coming in at once. You get her returning with this relationship with Ben Affleck. Me personally, I always saw her with Mark Anthony. That was more my vibe. But if she's happy with Ben Affleck, it's great. And it does really offer a chance for her to kind of go down that route, right? But that's not necessarily what has people feeling disconnected. And I wanted to get your opinion on this because we have nuanced conversation. So I want to say I can see both sides, right? But I also don't want to be just in the chatter talking about, well, J-Lo sucks because da-da-da-da. I want to say that I think J-Lo has brought a lot to the table. And when you do that year after year after year after year, there's a chance to misstep. She does a lot of really great things creatively. She's got some great creative forces behind her. Benny Medina, Elaine Goldsmith Thomas, like, they really do try a lot. But that doesn't mean that they hit all the time. you as somebody who got a chance to interview her and understanding the iconness of this Latina who has been out there doing her thing for so many years, what was your reaction to some of the chatter that's going on with J-Lo, and is she authentic, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, even I think I don't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago where people like, I can't believe J-Lo is doing this tribute. Like even comments like that. I think this isn't new to her. She's been hearing these types of comments, this feedback, and it's unfortunate. Look, we know that every artist isn't for everyone across the planet. Everyone has their certain audiences, they got their certain fan bases, and sometimes no matter how great you are to some people, you're horrible to other people. But I ain't gonna lie, man. I think she handles the haters fairly well, and I think even with the story that broke a couple of weeks ago, where she had a flat tire, her and Ben got out the car, and could they have attempted to change the tire? I mean, everyone's critical about that. Like, what kind of man doesn't change his own tire? Or like, look, bro, that's the point of road service. Like, I drive two different types of vehicles, and they both come with road service assistance. So of the package, I'm going to call roadside assistance. I mean, I'm Eagle Scout here, baby. You know what I mean? I can definitely change a tire, but at one point when you're paying for the service, you got to use it. And yeah, I think, a lot of the chatter, and when you hit me up, I was like, what are they saying now about her? Because, I'm tapped in, but it's like, it's always so much noise that you hear there's of people that a lot of people are fans of. And it's just unfortunate, but I think she handles the haters well. And especially with the movie. I know we're probably going to talk about that on Amazon Prime. And
we're going to talk about the movie that she financed.
I'll let you just roll into that, but she handles it
well. Well, okay, so again, without giving too much, like we don't need to spend a lot of time on, because everyone's opinions are their own.
Right.
But I will give the nuanced balance to the conversation. So the movie comes out. Me as a big J-Lo fan who has seen her at the Staples Center in Los Angeles when she was performing with Mark Anthony all those years ago, and at the 50th birthday, I saw her at Madison Square Garden. In fact, I saw her 2 times at Madison Square Garden because the show that I was at was the show that there was the rolling blackouts. So specifically, the lights went out. It almost seemed like the show was going to be bigger and better. I was like, is Cardi B coming out? But it turns out like there was actually a citywide lights were out. And so we had to go from a Saturday show to a Monday show. So I actually got to see J-Lo twice for that 50th birthday. And I know that a little bit of my excitement comes from the fact that when you are chasing a career and having that sustainability to do something so big as a 50th birthday party at Madison Square Garden and the tour itself, somebody like me who has also had my journey with, working on creative things, you can't help but be like, wow, that's really motivational. So I'll always be on the side of being very supportive of J-Lo based on motivation. Now, the one thing that has been a little bit of a disconnect is the Jenny from the block. Right. So that's really kind of taking people in a direction. And you know what's so funny? And I'm such a, grew up in LA, but I'm such a fan of New York, lived there for 7 years. We had some good hanging out in New York recently. So I'm always all for that. And I want to say that while some of the chatter was just a little much, this is actually a bit of a teachable moment for J-Lo too, who doesn't necessarily need a teachable moment, but what it is saying is you're not relating, and to listen a little bit and make a pivot is actually a good thing, and there are times where I'm like, just let her do what she got to do. She's just trying to be creative, but like, this is a wonderful time for her to say, you know what? I can't be doing the same things. You know what I mean? That worked all those years ago. And I keep circling back to all these things that are comfortable to me.
Right.
Jenny from the block, Ben Affleck. And we know that these things work creatively, but at some point, the chatter, while it's a lot, sometimes it is a reflection of how people feel. You are in a space where you're doing your music, your movies, you're dancing, and you want to make sure that you stay relatable. Do you feel like all of this took her away from being relatable?
No, I mean, if anything, I think it shows almost the hustle that a lot of Americans are doing right now. I was just talking about this earlier today, as a matter of fact. Somebody brought up the employment rates, right? And we're like, well, yeah, the unemployment rate is actually down. More people have jobs. And I'm like, that's because you have to work 2 or 3. to be able to live, to be able to make it. We were talking about the cost of living as well. And I think when you see a mentality of hustle right now and having multiple venues or different ways to go out and get that money, it might even show a more human aspect because she's a mom, right? So what do mama bears got to do? They got to take care of the kids by all means. And we
Mhm.
know in this industry that you got to strike while you can, right? Nothing is forever in life, A, but B, especially in the entertainment industry where there's so many eyes on people all the time, especially when you put yourself out there or not on social media, people are going to be watching what you're doing. So you have to stand tall and firm and accept the criticism in this industry. And I think she's navigating that. But again, being not everybody can afford the dresses that she has. Not everybody can afford the skincare routines and the gyms and the personal trainers and the diets and all that. But I think the hustle to go out there and get it, being in New York, every time I touch down there and I see so many people walking in the different boroughs, it really does remind me of that. And same thing with Houston, Texas, man. It's hustle town. It's you got to go out, you got to get it. And I think she still brings that Jenny from the block mentality, that
Mhm.
coming from the Bronx, you got to go out there and get it. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think people, can kind of relate to that. And actually, when we talk about the movie, when we get to that, one thing I think she was vulnerable at some points in there. I don't
Right.
know if people caught the jokes that she would kind of make about herself, and they weren't like knee slapper jokes, but there were some
Yeah.
parts that she addressed some of the kind of things that people do say about her. And I think that also shows the humanity when you can be vulnerable or poke fun at yourself in certain situations. And I
Yeah.
think she did that with the movie. So
Even the movie she had, the Marry Me movie, the one with Owen Wilson,
yeah,
there was a lot of that where the character was very like had everything, but also was very hollow inside. And there isn't a way that you watch that movie and don't see some similarities to the role
yeah,
and J Lo herself. And that is what the constant struggle is. To have everything means sometimes other things you cannot have. And before I get into the movie and the documentary and kind of get what you thought about it,
mhm,
it's I did want to say you touch on something that is, and I kind of already mentioned it, but like the main factor as to why I get so excited about her. So to me, yes, the on the six Jenny from the block being received by different people with different viewpoints. However, I think the main focal point there is the, like you were saying, the tenacity and the drive. So I remember like when her music first came out and it was the on the six, to me at that time I had never lived in New York. It was like, oh, that reminds me of, combing up the 405 freeway, working the 110 freeway, working jobs that weren't paying well, but they were accessing me into my career. And so really it's a relatability factor that she does give you. You mentioned Mama Bear, once that's in the picture, you really got to go. So
right,
while I say on one side, yeah, she could reinvent, use this time to pivot a little bit and maybe do different things because you are, a different age now. You're over 50, try some new things. But yeah, she just is more comfortable in celebrating that whole like, I have a tenacity that not a lot of people do. She does not drink, very rarely, and she financed the film. And honestly, I didn't mind it. So the film was a little funny, but I think that was like a warmth that she was trying to let in a version for her that was very artistic.
mhm,
When you break it down, yes, it wasn't a literal thing. I mean, it was supposed to represent, some of the choices she made at love and how she was happy with Ben. Financing it is another thing that, like, yes, it ended up going to Amazon, but there are times where we necessarily don't feel comfortable betting on ourselves. It's easy to say because she's made so much money.
yeah.
But it's just at the core betting on herself. Do you think people got that she bet on herself? Or is that something that sort of flies over people's heads?
Most people, no, I'd say most people don't understand. And even watching the movie, and by the way, shout out to my guy Gilbert Saldivar in there, plays the new guy,
Yeah,
he's
yeah, I
from
saw.
Houston, Texas. So, and by the way, he's danced for J Lo, he's danced
He
for
has.
Lara, he's danced for Janet, and he's, a lot of people know who Gilbert is if you're in like the
Mhm.
choreography world. And he was on East Los High
Yep.
on Hulu, and so like he's doing this thing in the acting and in the choreography world. Carlito, he was in there as well. He's another artist, but
Yeah.
it's cool to see her bring like multiple people in. But
Right.
I think um, the movie as a whole, you're looking at J Lo as the artist, as the singer.
Mhm.
the choreographer, the actress, any type of creative direction. But
Mhm.
I don't even know creative directoring is it is now. I just made it a term. And then you got, like you're saying, the financing or the money behind it, right? And all the different projects that she's doing, whether it's her money or choosing and directing, like how to spend the money. These are
Mhm.
skills. And when you look at what's involved in just This Is Me Now, that's 4 or 5 that you're seeing in there, right? To be able to
Mhm.
get it to Amazon in that position. And we don't necessarily know if it was, did she want it to even go to movie theaters? We don't know if it was made for that. This might have been a more intimate type of situation where you want to watch it at home, right? Where
Mhm.
the true fans, they don't want to step outside anywhere. They just want to eat it how they want, under the covers or at the crib on the couch with some other girlfriends. We don't know. The boo, who knows? But
Yeah.
I think it was actually probably the best rollout to put it out like that. And so when you look at all those aspects of what it takes to put out some of those projects, yeah, but it's not for everybody, like we
Yeah.
said. So not everyone is going to understand what was involved in the making of that.
Well, that's what I said. Today's episode was about celebrating her. You know,
Yeah.
obviously, I hit you with a couple critical things too, just a way to kind of revamp. But at the
Uh-huh.
same time, what I'm not going to do today, at least, is I don't like the notion of making it like Mariah versus J Lo. It's like at the end of the day, like this business is difficult. Their tenacity to put themselves out there for so many years. Me personally, I can love on Mariah Carey and everything she's brought to the table and her talents the same way that I can with Jennifer Lopez. I'm I guess just where I'm standing now, I'm not in the position to like, divide. I just don't feel like I feel like that happens
No one
very
should.
easily. And
You,
I
you,
understand. Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to. Like the term, there can be both. There can
Yeah.
be and. Everyone
Yeah.
is thinking or versus 10
Right.
songs versus 10. No, there's ands. And that's
Well,
what
that
we have to really start incorporating is the ands, especially when it's women or even fellas rapping or singing. Like
yeah.
there's no competition all the time. There is a lot of money out there
Yeah.
that people and labels and everyone is getting.
Mhm.
It's those that haven't figured kind of it out and they keep maybe doing the or
Yeah.
instead of going for the ands. And I think once people kind of wrap their head around that,
Mhm.
more money, even more money can be made and more people can be
Yeah.
stuck.
Well, and that's the thing. Yes, the art form. Let's say you and I, we both work in the radio space. Like I'd like to think I'm really good. I know you're really good. So competitive energy is fine, but I don't want to get into the point of like anything that Mariah has went through and how she feels about J Lo. That she's entitled to that feeling, and J
Mhm.
Lo's entitled to have done things the way she needed to do them as well.
Yeah.
It's not my job, really. I want to see them both shine. So that's just how I stand with the whole situation. But listen, the documentary was great. You mentioned Gilbert. Gilbert was also on the one documentary she had called Dance Again. So anyone who watched it, The Greatest Love Story Never Told, and need a little bit more, or you're on the fence with J Lo, go watch Dance Again, because Dance Again, and like I said, Gilbert was in that as well as all the other dancers. That was when she was doing her world tour, and I always stand by how wonderful Dance Again was. I believe it's on HBO Max, and it's in that vein. I sound repetitive, and in radio that's like a, a no-no, but I'm repetitive by saying it's all about tenacity with J-Lo. I guess the question I got to ask myself is, do I sometimes give J-Lo a pass because I connect to that? Like, am I sometimes being like, oh, can the music be better? I don't know. She has a lot of bops that are fun. She brings good energy. The music video, she takes chances, and I kind of love it.
I mean, not every record is going to be a smash, right? We
Mhm.
know that. Like every break we do, every show we do is not the greatest show that we've done. We understand there's a standard, and depending on who you are, you're trying to go get that standard and try to better your best every time we're on the air. But I think at the same time, when you start holding people, we're holding them at these levels. We expect that delivery every time, but again, we're human. It's just not possible every time to come out the gate. The major league basketball or baseball players, even basketball players, missing free throws. You got people striking out at the plate, obviously knocking them out the park. It's the same thing in music, and I think we got to start. We got to stop treating people in music with their artistry as these other professionals, or vice versa. And then one thing I want to say as well is that there are far less talented people, just savvy people, creative people that get way more attention and praise And that's the irony of it all. People with a fraction of whatever they can bring to the table seem to get all the praise. And that's just kind of the state of where we're at right now. But I don't think she necessarily cares about that, because she's going to do the things that she feels her fans are going to want to hear, going to want to see. She knows her audience. She knows the direction to go. And when you know that, I think that's when you find the most success. You keep super serving your people that love you, and wanting to be around those people. And that's what I think, that's what she does.
Well, listen, and going on to radio, the career that you're in, that's what makes you a good radio talent. In the 8 years that I've known you, is there's a space to celebrate who you like. There's a space to be critical as well. But to rush to any conclusions, I didn't want to do it. So when I corresponded with you, I said, "Hey, let's do this episode, right? Let's talk
Yeah,
about J Lo." You, of
yeah,
course, famously have this wonderful interview with her that you did years back. And I remember my big thing. I believe we talked about it was I want to give everybody their roses, not blindly either. You want to make sure, but like I'm not dividing nobody. Like this is not about Ashanti. Ashanti actually famously went to J Lo's, I believe, 50th party, the one that was in Miami. So I know stuff had happened within everyone's career, but like sometimes they all just want to like live a little. The one time J Lo drinks all year long, they just want to like let their hair down and have a good time. And to
yeah,
me, the music was good. I actually did a full episode. I should tell you on YouTube.com/randomlyRJ Jr. and the Patreon, which was my Patreon account, patreon.com/randomlyRJ Jr., where I kind of talked about the This Is Me Then and the This Is Me Now, the two bodies of music
yeah.
and the different feelings that they got. So I'm just going to always be on the side of lifting what I feel is good. And actually, I mean, I have a shady bone in my body for sure. But for something like this, no, you're not going to tell me she isn't legendary, having done so much for so long. You could have
Exactly.
a 5-year run. You could have a 10-year run. I mean, everything from the physical fitness, to the well, you can't do music and star in the biggest movie. What was the one that she had that was huge? Made in Manhattan. You can't do that at the same time. She's always like, "Watch me." And
Watch me.
to that, you're gonna make missteps. I'm not saying she hasn't made missteps, but then again,
Right,
so have I.
right, right. And that's what
Yeah,
I mean. We all have. You can't bat 1,000, right? It's just, hey, man,
yeah,
it is what it is. You're not gonna get them all right all the time. So I just hold her as a human. I hold her as any other artist, whether it's I mean, name it. It doesn't even matter. But
yeah,
and even in the fact, I almost feel like she gets double criticized because there might be English or it might be in Spanish.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And so there's different audiences that a lot of people can only go to one audience. This
right,
is a global star we're talking about here. Like with Pitbull, English or Spanish. Like, and Pitt is not even in the television aspect or
right,
on big feature films, and he's still that global icon as well. But again, it's two audiences. You may have the English, you may have Spanish, and sometimes people can be super critical of a Spanish album and they love the English, or they may hate your English album
right.
but love the Spanish one. And so I think when you're in these positions, like I said, tough skin. You got to be built for this. Not everybody's built. They couldn't even take probably half an eighth of the criticism that this woman endures. And
Yeah,
I feel like we're standing or just like being really fans, but it's not really that. It's just
yeah,
really like give the credit where credit's due.
right.
And anytime, like even if it's on a direct message, whether it's her or if it's her team or whoever on Twitter, salute to them because they're at least answering back on some of the conversations as well in the messages. So that's cool to me.
Do you want to know? I want to hear more about your interview with her as we wrap up here and any last thoughts. But I've told you this before. Do you want to know why I think that your interview was so wonderful with her? Why you guys connected?
I have an idea from what people have told me, but please, you let me know.
Well, it just feels like, some of the in terms of the publicity machine, the access to interviewing J-Lo, usually it's just not a lot of people with the chops that you have. You have been working in the radio industry as well as many other entrepreneurial things for so many years. And I just feel from the entire episode that I had watched, we of course are playing it right now, it felt like she connected to you on, it's funny, we mentioned relatability. It's as if she saw a little bit of, I mean, this is a big compliment to you. She saw a little bit of what you're doing and how your questions weren't gotcha questions, how you were layered, balanced, and nuanced, and she connected to that. Because if I understand correctly, didn't you get a little extra time that you weren't sort of expecting?
Yeah, a little bit. And see that smile right there? Look at that smile. That's what I call cracking. And so when I can crack an artist at the beginning, that's when I know we can have a real conversation. And so once I made J-Lo smile, it was like, this is going to be good. Like I felt it immediately when we first started talking. And you're right. It was the relatability. It was the conversation, I think, because they told us that there were some things that, and every PR publicist will do this, say, hey, we really don't want to talk about this in this direction, or if you're going to ask this, blah, blah, blah. A lot of artists do that. And I think when I went and she only did a couple of interviews. I think it was myself, Zane Lowe, Hoda on the Today Show, maybe one or two more. And so I took it as an extreme honor that I was chosen as one of the people, right? Especially if there's only like up to five people getting the opportunity to interview. And so I understood the mission. And I think that's one thing with people is to not be disrespectful to someone and to also respect their time. And so I think in the way that I was asking the questions, like you said, thank you, by the way, it was to not ever be disrespectful, but just to show the fact that the situations in a breakup, and that's like my favorite way that I asked the question about the song we were about to go into. And it was making it relatable to all of us after a breakup. So, because it wasn't, I'm not asking you about A-Rod specifically. I'm asking about how we all can get over someone or time to move to a different relationship.
Right.
And I think that's a skill that some people, they want, like you said, they want to go for that got you. They want to, because if you go back and watch the Hoda interview, she asked her directly, and J-Lo was like, Hoda, you have my number. You could have texted me that. You didn't have to ask me on TV. And I think there's a difference because, you know what I mean? When you respect, and that's one thing. I have plenty of friends and relationships or acquaintances and people in this industry, but there's that line that I still won't cross, and I'll still treat everyone with that professionalism and respect the wishes. If they allow me to go there and they feel comfortable, it becomes a different conversation, right? But if I know I'm just forcing something and trying to be blank and go for that question, it's just disrespectful and it's wrong. And I think that's why people enjoyed it, because they still got the answers that I feel like they were kind of waiting for. I just asked it in a different way. And if they were paying attention, they got it.
Yeah, you and I worked together 8 years ago, but it was that moment when I had learned that you had that interview, and I watched it because I don't just watch clips. I watched the entire thing. I want to see the balance of the interview, and I was like, oh, Crisco really got something wonderful. And something so valuable about that interview, and we'll wrap up here. I do have other topics I may want to talk with you about down the road.
Bring me on anytime, man. I'd love to.
Be it with J-Lo and even the tenacious energy that she has in terms of people state her, if she's kind or not kind. Maybe we will do that with our other mutual friend Astra, possibly. We'll find a time. But here's what I'm going to go with as a high note, because I do want to tackle that one day, is J-Lo and how people seem to really think she isn't as kind. Personally, I think if you're kind and you bring the heat, you're going to get something wonderful. And you did. And I feel like when she meets me, she's going to be like, I love Randomly Ronnie Jr. And furthermore, let me put money into his Patreon account, patreon.com/randomlyRJ Jr. But here's what I'm going to leave you with, Crisco, and you could have last thoughts after this. What is another valuable thing is it's the influence, because at the end of the day, whatever it is that you're doing, or if you have to dust yourself off and get on your feet again after a relationship, or you didn't think you could be the most amazing ballet dancer, or you didn't think you could scholastically achieve this or that. Tenacity. It means something, and she does bring that. So for better or worse, Jenny Lowe, from the block or otherwise, and she's obviously not who she was when she was 26 years old and doing those early movies. Right. However, it's tenacity, and honestly, you don't have to respect it, but me personally, I do respect it. So Jennifer Lopez, last thoughts.
I think maybe the term also relentless. A lot of people sleep on that term, but to be tenacious, to be relentless, to go after it and get it, to be able to rise again. And I think when what you're good at. I think you are great, and you know what you're calling,
Mhm.
and you see a bigger picture, and you know you have people depending on you, and you're putting on for other people as well, and you're still trying to maintain the balance of work life, love life, your own personal your
Mhm.
life. Yeah, you know, it's a struggle for many of us, but to be able to do it and do it effectively and keep pushing in a career past, you know, whether it's 5 years, 10, 20, 30, 40, however long people keep going and they keep going. I
Mhm.
think one thing that I'll end with this, and I have my note right here because I went back and I scanned through the movie again because I was thinking, you know what, there were some good stuff in there. And I'll talk about who in another show about what the actual movie reminded me of.
Mm.
I mentioned her name earlier, and I want you to go back to 1989-ish and think
Okay.
about which artist I'm talking about. And it was another film, but with all the dancing and kind of a storyline. Not saying it's the same storyline,
Mm.
but some of the post-apocalyptic or kind of
Mm.
war. We'll get to that at a later date.
Okay.
But the last line and how you kind of saw things come full circle in there was the hummingbird when she had the umbrellas and outside. The whole movie started with the hummingbird, right? So
Yeah.
it brings it full circle. But the last thing that she was saying was like, never give up. I think that was the last words
Yeah.
that are in that movie. And I think that's exactly how we end this. And to piggyback off what you were saying, never give
Never
up.
give up.
And I
Yeah.
think that's Jennifer Lopez.
This is
Never give up.
me now, as she would say it. And listen, uh, Rita Moreno winning the Academy Award was an influence. J Lo is an influence. So it's exciting to see what you putting your best art forward can do for others. So
Yeah.
that's what it's all about too. So, anyways, we're celebrating J Lo. We obviously came with a little critique as well. We love the movie. We love the documentary. Crisco, thank you for
And
your
it wasn't
time.
for
And
everyone. Maybe if some people are like, it's too much of a musical. Cool. Fast forward. Get to the story. But it's part of that's the point of one of these
yeah,
films. It's to wrap all of you in it. And that's her. This is
yeah.
her story. That's it. You can like it or not like it. That's her story.
I think we got to get a group of our friends together and let's go to an upcoming tour of hers. That's I think our next part of our agenda.
I'm down.
Crisco, thank you so much for your time. Keep up
Thank
the
you for
great
having me,
work with
man.
your radio station, and we will talk on the next one.
I appreciate you.
All
Much
right.
love.
Hey, Ronnie Jr.